Hello, it's Mr. Nihilist. Today we're going to learn about the digestive and excretory system. And I put a picture up here of one of my favorite foods, which is smoked ribs. And just by looking at it, you should almost start to salivate. And salivation is actually the first part of the digestive process because what you're doing is making these enzymes that are going to help break down that food that you eat. So the purpose in the digestive system is to convert food particles into simpler, smaller micromolecules that can be absorbed into the bloodstream and used by the body. So when we start out today, I want to start looking at an overall view, and I'm going to go through the different parts and I'll show you the picture and places where these parts are and how food is digested in each one and kind of the process the body goes through. Now, when we think of digestion, I want you to think of this. Here I have a nice granola bar. If I were to open this up and just stick it in my mouth, shove it down my throat and swallow, I want you to think about how that would feel, okay? Because that'd be very painful because I just took a huge block of granola bar and I put it right down in my throat. So part of what we do with digestion is we have to take a big block of something and chew it up into nice, tiny, manageable pieces. And that's called mechanical digestion. So in mechanical digestion, that takes place in your mouth with your teeth. You're breaking down food into very small parts. And that way we can chemically digest food. Chemically digesting food means that we are taking different enzymes. And remember, enzymes are going to break things down into their smallest parts. And so the phrase "you are what you eat," you will find out is very much true. The proteins that I ate yesterday are the proteins that will become part of my body later on. And so when we talk about the digestive system, we have to look at what makes up the human body. Well, the human body is made up of the four macromolecules: carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids. Those items are also in the foods that we eat. So essentially what we need is we need different enzymes that are going to break down each and every one of those macromolecules. So here we go. Let's say I take a bite of my granola bar. That is going to go down the esophagus, and the esophagus does have a muscle that kind of helps you cinch that food down. So that means that even if you're upside down, your esophagus can push that food down. That would be like a smooth muscle along the digestive tract. So the esophagus is important for us. It sends food down into our stomach. Our stomach is a place where mechanical digestion takes place and chemical digestion takes place. Okay, mechanically that stomach is going to churn the food, and you have all sorts of muscles along that stomach, and it is going to churn it up. It's going to move it around, while you have different enzymes that are going to be breaking down the food that we eat into a product called chyme. This soft, almost liquidy matter. Once the stomach has done its job, it's going to send food down into the small intestine. Now you might wonder, well, doesn't the food go through the pancreas or the liver? It actually doesn't. The pancreas and liver are there. What they do is they produce different enzymes to help us break down food. So they're constantly there producing the things that help us break down our food, but our food doesn't actually go through them. So once the food or the chyme gets to the small intestine, that's where all of these nutrients are absorbed. And these nutrients are then put in the bloodstream where they can be used to get transported to different parts of your body. Now, your small intestine is like, I want to say it's like 30 feet long. Okay, if you stretch it end to end. So there's a lot of digestion that takes place there. And the key is surface area. How can we use this to increase surface area so it goes through more, so more nutrients can be absorbed, and then our body can be using those nutrients. So that's why your small intestine is so long. So after the stomach comes the small intestine. Once it goes through the small intestine, it goes to the colon or the large intestine. And so by this time, it's really liquidy, and like I said, it's called chyme. And essentially what the large intestine does is the food will go around, and the large intestine extracts water from it. And so that way, it can kind of help it get ready for the departure of the body. And so essentially the colon kind of wraps around the small intestine. I like to think of it almost like the victory lap before the food gets put back um, into the earth. So that's kind of the digestive system rundown. And here are some of the details that you will have to know, starting with some of the most important organs and their functions. Okay, the mouth. Now, the mouth is important because we chew up that granola boulder and we make it into small parts, therefore mechanically digesting it. However, chemical digestion also takes place in the mouth because our saliva contains an enzyme called amylase. And remember, enzymes always end in that ASE, and that means it breaks down a certain something. In this case, it's going to break down carbs. So chemical digestion takes place right from the get-go. And from there, that food will go down into the esophagus, and the esophagus is just the pipe connecting to the mouth and the stomach. And through that, there's the muscles that help take it down into the stomach. Your stomach, like I said, once again is going to churn that food, and if there's no food in there, that's why your stomach actually is grumbling or growling, because it's still churning. And so the stomach secretes hydrochloric acid, which is very acidic, and it helps something called pepsin, and that's an enzyme which helps break down proteins. So once again, you look at those four macromolecules and you can tell there are certain enzymes that are going to break down each one. Finally, once the food is broken down in the stomach and mixed with the digestive juices, we call that chyme. Okay? And the stomach is very, very acidic. Sometimes if you, well, after you vomit, you can taste some of that acidity. So it's very powerful. And the stomach is also lined with this thick layer of mucus that protects the stomach so it doesn't burn. Okay? Um, Next up is the pancreas. The pancreas, the food doesn't actually go through, but the pancreas produces insulin, and that helps regulate blood sugar levels. The pancreas is also important because it secretes something called lipase, which is going to be an enzyme that breaks down lipids, produces more amylase. It produces another enzyme called trypsin, and I'm not necessarily concerned that you know those, but I do want you to understand that all of these enzymes take place in breaking that food that we eat down into its smallest parts, and our body can therefore use it. Okay? Onto the liver. The liver has, it transports bile and produces bile. Bile is an emulsifier. Basically, it breaks down the fats in foods. Okay, so it's another thing that helps with chemical digestion. So your liver produces bile. Your gallbladder, which is kind of right underneath your liver, it actually stores the bile. And then that leaves our small intestine. Once it goes through the stomach, the small intestine will take it, and chyme enters the small intestine. Nutrients are absorbed here into the bloodstream, and the small intestine includes these folded surfaces called villi, and the purpose of that is to increase surface area. And so I do have a picture I can show you of the villi, and here it is. Here's villi in the small intestine, and you can see there's all these folds, and then there's even folds within your folds to produce more and more surface area. Okay? And so the more surface area, the more nutrients we can absorb. Here's a picture of your stomach, and your stomach has a thick mucus around it, and if that gets broken down, if there's not enough mucus, you can end up getting something like an ulcer. Okay? So let's go back. So you have the villi, you have microvilli to increase surface area. Then you have the large intestine, which removes water from the chyme, getting the waste ready to be put back onto the earth. So the large intestine wraps around, and like I said, it's kind of like the victory lap. Okay. The next is the excretory system. Okay. The purpose of the excretory system is to take those bodily waste and get rid of them. Okay, including excess water, including excess salts. And so the number one player here is the kidney. What does the kidney do? Well, it basically takes blood and it filters out your blood. And so excess water and other waste products eventually travel out of the kidney as urine. So all it does is it acts as a filter. So your kidneys are very important in taking your blood and just getting all that waste product out of there. Eventually, what happens is they will travel to the ureter into the urinary bladder, where eventually we urinate from there and get rid of that waste product. From there, other important excretory organs are the rectum. This is where solid food waste travel out of the body through the rectum, and that's kind of where it goes after the large intestine. Your skin is also considered part of the excretory system because your sweat glands remove excess water and salts from the body. Also, your lungs expel waste carbon dioxide gas. So, a lot of things in the body we take for granted, but it's so interesting to look at how I can take something like this, and it really is true. You are what you eat. So, if you can go through and explain the process of the digestive and excretory system, what happens where, and be able to explain where carbohydrates, proteins, and all of that get broken down, then you are well on your way.